I had a hobby too. Mine happened to be guns and ballistics, and I studied guns and ballistics as much as I could, and I wrote an article about high velocity.
So out of all my years working at Weatherby, the last 5 have been some of the most exciting. Working with Adam, with him running the company.
And to think that I get the opportunity of carrying on my grandfather's legacy 75 years later here in Sheridan, Wyoming, I mean, it really is a dream come true.
Oh, I'm home. Thank God I'm home.
On our mark, the Weatherby Podcast.
On our mark, the Weatherby Podcast. I'm Luke Thorkildsen, the Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Product Development here at Weatherby. And I'm here with our new marketing manager. And I realized I said his last name wrong the other day, and I feel really bad. But Tyler, will you say your last name properly?
My last name is Grayton. So Luke called me Gruthin, really, welcomed me into the podcast studio.
I did such a bad job.
But yeah, no, I'm excited.
In fairness, it is Grethen.
Yeah, there is no A in that name at all.
Okay.
Not really your fault.
I'm not trying to be defensive, but maybe a little.
And I'm sure in some onboarding I described my name as Gruthin because no one can spell it. If you say Grayton, then you got to be like, well, then sounds like Gruthin. But yeah.
I just read it in my head as Grethen, and that's what it became. And I blame Curtis.
Yes, blame Curtis.
Shout out. Curtis is a mutual friend, a really good friend of mine that I worked together with years ago, and Tyler came from AOB and worked with Curtis there.
Yeah, got to work with him for a couple of years.
Yeah, it's always good when there's a mutual connection. Then he was a good reference. So it's awesome.
Well, today the topic of today is you were lucky enough to win an Ibex hunt.
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy situation.
A little less than a month ago, and now we're back. So
It's kind of a long story. And a bit of a crazy story, and maybe you can help me unpack this a little bit here. But got to rewind quite a ways.
Yeah, let's start way back because there's the winning of the hunt, there is COVID, and then there is going on the hunt. So there's kind of like 3 different segments.
Yeah. So let's go back to 2020, January of 2020, just before SHOT Show. There is a show for the Wild Sheep Foundation that they call Sheep Week.
Yeah, it's a whole week, right?
So it's a whole week of just of everything sheep.
Yeah, and this was an in-person one because the last 2 years it's been kind of a virtual deal, right?
COVID kind of started with them doing a hybrid in-person. Well, 2021 was 100% virtual, and then 22 was a hybrid. Yeah.
Okay.
So pre-COVID, everything's normal. Gas is still cheap. Everything's great. January, I'm at Sheep Week. We're just there as exhibitors. We've got the backcountry rifle. We had launched that in September of 2019. We were pumped. We've got the ultimate sheep rifle. We're talking to people at Sheep Week for the first time now, January of 2020. People are loving this rifle. We had launched it with our 6.5 RPM. Just spent a day talking to everybody about that. It was a great time. I think that Wild Sheep Foundation does one of the coolest things in all of the hunting conservation shows, if you will. They have a thing called Less Than One Club. It is kind of like a show by itself, an event, let's call it, an event in itself inside of the show. So it's an afternoon where it's a party. And it's a party for everybody that have not yet shot a sheep.
So if you have shot a sheep before, you're not eligible.
You can come.
But you're not eligible.
But you cannot win.
You cannot win. Okay.
So it is a really, really fun event where if you have shot less than one sheep, or no sheep would be an easier way to say it. But
so the majority of people.
Correct. Yeah. Because let's be honest, sheep hunting is not necessarily like going and shooting an antelope. It's a little bit different. There's far, far, far less of them on the mountain. They're not a super resilient species in general, especially FNAs, the 4 North American wild sheep. So it's totally a different animal. But I think Wild Sheep Foundation recognizes that. And so to get other people or people that may not normally have a chance to sheep hunt into the game, they do this less than one club. So it's $35 raffle ticket.
And you
There's
bought one.
two. So there's actually two. They have less than one, which is for North American. So basically you've never shot a bighorn, a Dall, a Stones, or a desert sheep. And then there's also a less than one eye or international. And that's you've never shot an international sheep or Ibex in that category. I was in both.
So you had a ticket in
Yes.
both buckets.
Correct.
And you only get one ticket in each bucket, or could you buy multiple?
Correct. So your question is actually really good because I was slightly confused. I bought multiple, but as we were talking and we're in the show, I, for some reason, in my mind, thought I was only in the North American, not the international. So they first do the North American. I can't remember if they did international or North American. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, the raffle is a blast because if you've ever been at a live raffle where they pick a number and they just wait forever, like, is John Doe here? And then all the energy goes out of the room while you're waiting for John Doe to either come back for the bathroom or he just like went home. That is not this one. What happens is Gray Thornton from Wild Sheep, the president of Wild Sheep Foundation, is awesome. He's like, John Doe, going once, twice, sucks to be John Doe, and like throws the name out.
Gotta be in the room, ready to go.
Ready to roll.
Okay.
Ready to roll. And it's like there's tons of energy in the room. Like people that haven't shot a sheep and people that have are in there that are there just to support because it's such a fun place to be. Everybody's got a beer. It's a great time. So there's 3 hunts for each.
Okay. So
North American and international.
So how many people are in this room, though? So like you're looking
That's a great question. I feel like I'm going to blow this number out, but let me say that there's 1,000 people in the room.
1,000 people in the room.
Yeah.
And there's no cap on tickets. So in
And
theory,
maybe so. I want to say that I asked the year that I won. I think there was 1,200. So maybe there's 1,500 people in the room. There was 1,200 people in the less than one and 600 in the less than one eye. Round numbers.
Gotcha.
So I had a 3 in 600 chance, you could say.
That's pretty good
for the
odds.
one that I drew,
Okay.
which I think is probably one of your best odds to draw a sheep tag anywhere.
Yeah.
So, they draw a first name on less than one eye. Dude's there. Awesome. He picks a hunt. Great.
Oh, so there's
pumped.
3 hunts and he gets to pick
Yep.
that as well. Okay.
Correct. So there was, I think that year there was a New Zealand, there was 2 Ibex in Kyrgyzstan, and then there was the deal in New Zealand that I can't remember the species, but
Gotcha.
you could go shoot something, a chamois or
tar or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
So they draw second guys there. There's one tag or, drawing left. They draw it. Can't remember the guy's name.
No way.
Wasn't there.
You don't want to be that guy.
He wasn't there. So then they draw another name, and Gray Thornton's up there, and he goes, oh, I know this guy from one of our sponsors in beautiful Sheridan, Wyoming. And all of a sudden, it's one of like 6 people. It's one of the Weatherby guys.
So is your heart racing at this point, or did
Yeah.
it take like 3 seconds for it to click, or was it like immediate, like Sheridan? That's where I'm from.
No, at this point, I'm convinced it's Raleigh Whalen that's our national sales manager because he is a Wyoming resident his whole life. After like tons of years, he shot a bighorn sheep here. And so he was in the less than one eye only.
Oh, so because to circle back,
and so
you're not sure you were in
when
that.
he and I were talking, I just kind of confused myself, and I'm just not that smart apparently. But I turned my cell phone on and just start recording Raleigh Whalen, and he's like biting his finger as Gray's like drawing it out a little bit, the suspense of it, and he goes, Luke Thorkildsen, why don't you come on up here? And I'm filming Raleigh, and he just looks at me like, it's you! Oh my gosh! And I'm now it takes me a second, and I just kind of put my arms up. I've got a beer. I run up on the stage. I just jump straight up on the stage. I give Gray a hug, and yeah, it's surreal, from that, because it's a dream of so many hunters to shoot.
And it was almost
a sheep.
I did not know the part where someone was drawn and was not there.
Before.
So it was that close.
It was that close. Yeah. Had that guy been present. Yeah. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool though.
So,
yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty crazy. So they bring the winner up on the stage and they give you like the big board. It's kind of like the size of our On Our Mark podcast sign that we've got here. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're not, it's just, I don't know. It's like a big poster board kind of thing. Yeah, like a picture you have in your house. So they hand me this board and an envelope, and I'm pumped. And Gray's like, we'll get with the details on it later and whatnot, but you're going with this outfitter and blah, 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 blah. So I'm pumped. And so one of the first people that come to me after I get off the stage, everybody's congratulating you. But my buddy Barrett that I had met the previous year at Wild Sheep comes up to me and it's like, oh, dude, that's awesome. You're going to love this hunt. I've hunted with this outfitter before. You're going to have a blast, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm just so happy for you. I'm like, man, that's great. So I ended up hunting with Barrett, so I'll kind of come back to that part of the story later, but it worked out great. But tons of people are just congratulating me. And
you're probably on cloud nine at this point.
The other part that I didn't even realize at the time is it comes with a lot of other stuff too. It's not just the hunt. Like, it's a full gear package. It basically comes with everything except for a flight and a gun, which works out good for me.
It does work out because you just launched the ultimate sheep rifle. Yeah.
Loophole put an optics package together, like just full gear, Stone Glacier pack, Schnee's boots, like you're kind of like decked out head to toe. Everything's pretty awesome.
Like something that was great just got better.
Yeah.
It's like having your cake and eating it too.
This is amazing. So I'm on cloud nine. It's great. And just reeling and, texting, calling my wife and family like, oh my gosh, I just won a sheep hunt. And my wife's like, yeah, where is that? It's like, oh, Tajikistan.
So when you said that, was there any, I know when sometimes you draw a big tag or something, then now you're like, oh no, this is a huge opportunity. Did any of that ever come over with you on the mental side of like, hey, this is a big trip and I need to get ready for it?
Yeah, a little bit. And plus, like, I'm a dumb American, and like I kind of know where Tajikistan is, but if I had to like very accurately describe where it was at that time, may have been a little tough if I'm being real honest.
Yeah, they're like, hey, the only way you get this tag, you have to point it out on a map. You'd probably be like, I'm not sure.
It's by the other stands, which is accurate. But ended up not going into Tajikistan. Long story, partly to do with Barrett. But we ended up ultimately going in Kyrgyzstan. So trying to plan the hunt was really difficult because that was January. Looking at maybe going in the fall, I'm trying to work around some other things that I have that fall. Well, remember like March?
Yeah, like 2 months later.
COVID came out and nobody knew what to do. And so I'm talking with the outfitter and he's like, man, I don't know. Here's the deal. Like, we'll make it happen. So the way it works is Wild Sheep Foundation, basically through the raffle sales and whatnot, they pay for the hunt through the outfitter. So there are some that are probably 100% donated. My specific one, Wild Sheep paid. The outfitter through that, he's like, here's the deal. We'll make it happen. So we'll figure out when we can do it based on, traveling and everything else restriction-wise in the world. So 20 goes by. 21 goes by. I tried to go in 21, tried to find somebody to go with, and it was really hard to find somebody that wanted to go to Tajikistan in 2021 where there's travel restrictions and airline stuff. People don't know. COVID tests coming back into the States, just a lot of junk that nobody wanted to deal with. I didn't really want to deal with it either, but I wanted to go on the hunt. So the beginning of this year, 2022, I talked to my friend Barrett, and he's like, hey man, I've been thinking about going over with outfitter to maybe shoot a Marco Polo. And I'm like, whoa, that would be pretty awesome. He's like, what if we both shot an Ibex and then I shoot a Marco Polo? And I'm like, dude, I would be thrilled to death at the opportunity to even see a Marco Polo Argali on the hoof.
Up close,
like that would be amazing. I was like, tell you what, Barrett, like if you are game, I'll film it. We'll make a little Weatherby video, which we're going to do, which I've filmed the whole thing. So, but we'll get to this part of the story in a minute. And so we make it happen. But we talk to the outfitter. There's not a great spot that he has access to in Kyrgyzstan where he could hunt good quality Marco Polo and Ibex out of the same camp.
It would have to be 2 different camps if you went there.
Correct. We'd have to move, and that's a substantial
we'll
undertaking.
get to like I'm sure the travel
Yeah.
countryside was insane.
So we decided we're going to go to Kyrgyzstan, which you're flying to Kyrgyzstan anyway, typically if you're going to Tajik. So it that actually was better, and he had a great camp that we could stay at. So that's what we ended up doing. We go to Kyrgyzstan.
So like how much farther in advance, and when you guys decided to go there, like flights getting booked, hotels getting booked, like is that 6 months?
No,
right away or
no? I mean, we decided we probably booked flights like a month and a half out. I mean,
okay, so nothing too crazy.
yeah. I mean, I think Barrett and I both have a lot going on personally, and so we wanted to make sure there was no last minute conflicts or anything. But yeah, we were trying to work it out through the outfitter. I would say he dragged his feet a little bit. More to come on that. But yeah, we booked it just kind of like you would, almost like a vacation. Like you've decided to come, but you don't necessarily book your flights when you decide to go to Hawaii or Florida or something. You kind of wait for you watch the flights and try to get them when they're well priced. So hotels, really didn't have to book hotels beforehand. It was really just a flight. It was really the main thing, and the gun. So flying internationally with firearm, you have to get a form that I totally just blanked on the name of, but I have it in my pocket, so I'm going to pull it out because I still have it in my wallet from going. You got to get a form with basically Department of Homeland Security. It's a CBP form 4457, and it's super official. It literally looks worse than a postcard. And it says that you have this gun leaving the States, basically. Like you get this form before you go, and then it allows you to bring that gun back is really what they care about. It proves that you had it beforehand so you can bring it back into the country.
You didn't have to fill out anything to take it into their country?
I did have to do some stuff to take it into Tajik or to Kyrgyzstan as well. So you just have to tell them serial number, caliber, and you have to declare like the number of rounds that you're bringing, like
to the number. So if you're bringing 27, you better have 27.
Every country's a little different. Some it's by weight, like you can't bring more than 20 kilograms or 40 kilograms. This is like I said, I'm bringing 60 rounds of 6.5 300. Like that was being very specific. So got there, met up with Barrett, and so I had 2 other guys joined us. Barrett's friend Gabe, and who is a guide and contractor. He guides some in Montana, I think some in Arizona as well. And then Robert joined as well. He is a deer biologist down in Texas. He used to work on the King Ranch, so he grew really big deer.
Big deer
That
guy.
was what he did.
Gotcha. And they're all going to shoot Ibex as well?
They're just shooting Ibex. So the 4 of us are shooting Ibex. And then Barrett is going to shoot a Marco Polo. That's the plan. So I meet up with everybody in Houston by design, and then we all flew. So my flights looked like from Sheridan, I drove up to Billings to originate from a Billings International Airport. Billings,
big airport.
Yeah, real big. Went from Billings to Denver, Denver to Houston, met up with the crew, Houston to Istanbul, then Istanbul to Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan.
So
4 flights.
4 flights from the time you left your house. How long did it take you to get
I tracked
down?
Wheels down, and it was almost 3 days.
3 days. Okay.
Yeah, almost 3. It's like 2.5 days because of like the way the time change and stuff works. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, so everything's great. We get there, and they're like, you know what? You need to get into a hotel and rest. We landed at 5 a.m. local time. And we all thought the plan was we're going to get in some Land Cruisers and boogie up to the mountains and, kind of cover some ground. It's like, I'll sleep in the car. It's like 16-hour drive. Like, it's a long way.
Yeah, that's quite the trek.
A long way to get in the mountains. Well over half that's on, like, mountain roads, not paved. So we're all kind of dreading that drive, especially after being in planes, trains, and automobiles for almost 3 days. We do stay in a hotel. We all tried to fight it, but the U.S.-based outfitter joined us as well because he was going to help Barrett.
Just like facilitate.
Yeah,
do all that stuff.
yeah, exactly. So he came, and he was pretty adamant that we take a night in the hotel just to get adjusted to the time. It'll make the whole experience more enjoyable. We're not going to have a problem getting animals. So we're like, okay, cool. So we do that, spend a day. It's weird. Like, you never know what to do. Like, if you land at 5 a.m., we literally checked into a hotel. I've never done this before. Checked into a hotel at 7 a.m.
That's usually when you're getting ready to check out.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, this is kind of weird. So I'm exhausted. I don't sleep well on airplanes. Take a nap, a couple hours. We meet up. We go have lunch. Come back, still tired. Decide to, like, just go to the gym for a little bit just to, like, get some blood flowing, do something. Then
because I'm sure you just were cramped in an airplane for 2-3 days. So, yeah.
Then we meet up for dinner. We meet up with Saku, who's the actual local guide and outfitter. And he was an awesome guy, really hit it off with him. Had dinner, and then we're like, decide the next morning they're going to pick us up at 5 a.m. That's what happened. We start to hit the road, and then we made it about 4 minutes. And then we just start stopping. It felt like we were stopping everywhere. Like the 4 hunters, we just wanted to get to the mountains. And we can see the mountains because they're huge. Bishkek's at 2,000 feet. The elevation's 2,000 feet. And we're going to be hunting at like over 12,000 feet. And so we can see these massive mountains in the distance. And we're like, we just want to go there.
Yeah, you see like the journey ahead. You're like at the foot of the mountains.
Yeah, and we're just in a town. Like, it feels like just kind of being in Asia. And we just start stopping, like, literally every mile. And Barrett and I are in separate cars. I end up in a Land Cruiser with Robert, and Barrett will text me. He's like, stopping again. I'm like, yep, number 7, number 8. So we'll stop. Like, there's just a bunch of roadside stands, like the bread guy. The bread guy, the banana guy, the potato guy, and they just start buying camp food. And I'm thinking to myself, we probably could have done this like yesterday when we were in a hotel all day, but I was just being impatient. I'm trying to, like, talk myself out of that. And
you were literally on a hunt of a lifetime. You're just like ready to get going.
And we're just all ready to get up the mountain. The U.S. outfitter's on his phone a lot, and we're trying to figure out, like, this, like, who's he even talking to this time of day? Like, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, because what is the time change is going to be, what, like 12, 14 hours difference, or?
It's exactly 12 from mountain time.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
I would call my family at 6 a.m. there, and it'd be 6 p.m. here. Okay. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
So if you've picked up already, I keep saying the U.S. outfitter. I'm trying to not name him specifically because there's going to be a term for the worse a little later. And there was a kind of a bad situation, not kind of a bad situation that's coming that we'll talk about. But I don't want to. I want to throw him under the bus, but I don't want to throw him under the bus. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So we do finally get off the. We get to this town, like the last real town. We're going to stop for lunch. I'm not kidding you, we take a 3-hour lunch. It's like multiple rounds of hot tea. It takes forever. The Saku and the drivers need to go run a couple errands. We had to get some, like, gas canisters for like jet boils and a couple other things. And I'm like, again, things that maybe could have been done before, but that's okay. I'm having a great time. I won this hunt. I've got a great attitude, but the other 3 guys, I mean, they paid for their hunts. So they're also,
kind of like sweat.
They're irked. Yeah. You know, we're all kind of irked. Like, this could be going a little smoother. And, we're still actually having a good time. You know, I think back in hindsight, like, I was impatient, and we were, but we're still, like, it's a gorgeous drive. We had passed a wild herd of camels, like,
they were just doing their thing.
Just doing their thing. It was really neat. So we see a lot of the countryside. So we leave this the last town, and we just start heading up the mountain at this point. Like, we get off the pavement, we're on dirt, and we're just driving, and it gets more and more and more remote. The road gets worse and worse and worse, and all of a sudden it's getting near dark, And I don't have a frame of reference on how much further to camp it is or isn't. I was told it's about a 16-hour drive, but I'm like, is that with or without the 42 stops? So the drivers of the Land Cruisers, no one spoke English. The only English-speaking local guy was Saku, and I was not in his car. And so I'm getting no real
So it's
information.
just you and the other guy who paid for an
Don't,
Ibex,
don't
just you two,
even
yeah.
know the driver's name. Just local driver.
Local driver. So you guys are now driving for 12, 14 hours, and you're just...
One time, the only English word that he said to me was toilet. So, yeah.
Universal language.
Yeah,
there.
everybody knows that one. So they pull off, and Barrett comes up to the window of our Land Cruiser, and he's like, apparently we're camping here. I'm like, what? He's not super happy. We decide to camp on the side of the road because it's almost dark, and the last 4 hours, apparently, of the drive that we have left to go are really rough. And we're like, guys, let's just push on. They're like, nope, we're staying here. So we end up camping there, and it was gorgeous. It actually rained quite a bit that night, which kind of stunk, but we packed up wet things, and then
Like you were in tents and stuff.
yeah, like literally
Tents
just
that you brought,
tents.
or just that they
the
had?
drivers literally slept in the Land Cruisers, like just in the driver's seat, just
leaned it back.
reclined the seat, slept in there. Saku had like a big like not quite wall tent, but almost a wall tent, and then I brought a little like Stone Glacier ultralight and just slept in that.
Yeah.
And so we leave the next morning. We drive 4 more hours. Then that last 4 hours, in hindsight, I am very glad that we waited. As we were talking, though, like we could have got there before dark with the 4 hours had we
Yeah.
not made all the stops. Anyway, we get there, and the lodge is amazing. Like I don't understand how they put this nice of a lodge this remote.
Like with electricity and everything, or
Yeah, generators. Ran
Generators.
on diesel generators. Huge, like enormous snooker table, like the size of this room. Like it was so big. Like can't make a ball to save your life. It's like little narrow pockets, and it was just really, really, really nice lodge. Sauna, like
a sauna too.
Nice,
Wow, you're in a
nice
spa
lodge.
treatment.
Yeah,
here.
it's legit. Like really nice wood. The amount of work that somebody put into getting that place built, I can't even fathom. So remote. It's at like 12,000
And you were not
feet.
expecting that. Like you had not seen any pictures of a lodge or anything like that
we,
before.
We climbed up this mountain pass. We got to 12,000 feet, and then usually we do that in the States. Like you're there for a few minutes maybe if you're driving, and then you drop off the other side. If you're like in the Rockies, the San Juans, Bighorns, you can get up that high almost, and then you drop off immediately. We drove at 12,000 plus feet for like 6 hours. Just forever. And it's slow going mountain roads. So somebody hauled all the building materials up these roads to get in there. It's crazy. So we get there at a little after lunchtime, like 1 o'clock, and they're like, make yourselves comfortable. We'll go shoot rifles, make sure everybody's dialed. Then we'll go hunt tomorrow. So we're like, okay, we're good with that. The goal is in sight. From the time I left my house to the time we got to that lodge, I started my watch. It was 93 hours. So haven't
quite the trek.
really done anything except travel.
It's like hurry up and wait that entire time.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you're going through airports and you're just sitting and waiting for the next boarding. And yeah, so 93 hours to get there. I get my gun out. I'm shooting a 6.5 300 with a hammer bullet. A 129 hammer. We don't offer that yet, but it should be coming soon. Really happy with it. I had no issues whatsoever. It was like I didn't adjust anything.
Just dead on.
Yeah, I was using the Leica GeoVid rangefinding, the GeoVid Pros, the rangefinding binos, and it takes into account like atmosphere. So I was dead on at 3 when I left, and I went out there. I was still dead on at 3, and then I picked a rock that was like vital sized at, I forget, it was like 704 yards or something like that, and dialed, and at 12,000 feet, it was like, I hit it like
Right there.
literally, like if I was aiming at a quarter, I hit the center of the quarter. I'm not kidding. It was like so spot on. I was like, okay,
That probably was like confidence.
Confidence
the roof.
through the roof. A couple, I think Robert made a small adjustment. Gabe made a lot of adjustments to his rifle. And they're kind of like, I could see they were a little frustrated. He got dialed, but stuff happens when you're traveling that far. We've just ridden forever in a car, so many planes and hard cases getting thrown around. So I was pumped. I didn't change anything. I was solid. So felt really good going in. The next morning, we take off on horseback, and they bring out very, very tiny horses. They're like so small. We see these big U.S. quarter horses.
Yeah, that are. I don't know horses, but I feel like 14, 15 hands. That's the.
Yeah, we've got like big horses here in the States. They don't have that there. They've got these tiny little mountain horses that are like crazy sure-footed. Barrett's 6'6". Big dude.
It's kind of like a big guy on a little horse.
Yeah,
situation.
big dude, crazy fit guy, like 6'6", 230 pounds, not an ounce of fat. And it almost looks like he can like stand over his horse, like like it's a motorcycle, like he could put almost both feet down. It's not quite that bad, but it kind of looked like that. We just take off riding. We ride about 6 miles away from camp, and then we just head up this, I don't know what to call it other than like a canyon. It's not quite a canyon, more of like a draw, or if you're from Montana, a coulee.
A coulee.
So we head up this coulee, and we just keep going up and up until like we can't really go anymore on horses. And
So when you guys got there, were you glassing at all, or just like as soon as you got there, you're like, okay, let's go to this next spot? Like
No, because we were a day behind. The actual like local guides were at camp before us, and they had gone out the day before, just looking for game for us. And so they had an idea of where they had seen some before, and so we're just headed for that spot.
Gotcha.
And so we basically get to that spot. And then we go peek over this ridge, and we're like, yeah, there's Ibex there, and there's some good ones. And they're a ways off, so we drop back down, and they're like, we're going to have lunch. I'm like, whoa. Like lunch? They're like, yeah, those Ibexes, what they do is they have no reason to go anywhere. It's like lunchtime, basically. It's the middle of the day. They're going nowhere. That's what they do is just loaf around in the shade. We think it's cool right now, but they think it's hot. So you're going to need the fuel for later. Just let's eat a little lunch. So we do that, and I'm still like, we've been just taking breaks for no reason for days.
At this point, you're like, I'm gaining weight on this trip.
Yeah, no doubt. So we have some lunch. We have some tea. We talk a little. It felt surreal because the scenery is just absolutely beautiful. Like we're at like 12,500 feet right now, looking out at mountains that look bigger than the Bighorns do from here. And so like we're at 4,000, the Bighorns are 13 something. And I'm like, okay, if we're at 12.5, like I'm looking on the Garmin, I'm like, those peaks are over 20,000 feet that are around us. I'm like, this is pretty rad. There's glaciers. It's so beautiful. So we put a plan together. We peek over this ridge. We find like a bench that we can kind of follow where they won't see us, and it'll put us on a ridge where we should be able to just like crawl over and like lay down prone and should be able to get a shot off. And so that's exactly what we do. It was maybe not quite an hour of hiking to close that distance, because they're a mile away or so where we saw them. And so we hike over, and immediately they're like, there's 2 good Ibex. There's 2 very good Ibex. And
So you have 2 guides or 1 guide?
Saku is with us.
Oh, Saku was
thankfully.
With you. Okay.
The other 2 guys, zero English whatsoever. Like grew up in the mountains there. Like I'm not kidding you. They were like, I don't know what the boots are called that you wear on a crabbing boat, but that's what they're wearing.
Okay.
Like they look like a sweat bike. It's a rubber boot. And they're running up and down the mountain, like running circles around us, like no problem. And while smoking a cigarette. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. So they're like, you guys need to shoot both of these, like a 1, 2, 3 shoot situation. And we're like, hold on, let's back this train up, because we're looking across this canyon. It's the one I decided I really liked is 454 yards away, and the one that Barrett's like, if I get an opportunity, I would shoot that one, and it was 499. And they're amongst lots of other ibex that are laying around. And so it's not like you just pick one giant ibex out of a herd, because they all look somewhat similar. Like it's a bachelor group of a bunch of ibex. And so we're trying to like dial in on exactly which one it is. And if you look away and look back, you're like, oh crap,
Which one is it?
Which one was it?
So did you have like a spotter or anything to be able to like confirm?
I did have a spotter on a camera, because I'm trying to film the whole thing. So the whole time I'm like kind of running a camera off and on. So I set up, we've got a Swaro spotter that we can hook up a camera body to. So I'm on it, but I'm so tight on it. When I look at it with my naked eye, I'm like, it's kind of hard to say exactly which one this is. So I'm trying to zoom out and make sure I'm in focus, and I'm looking at it, and I try to set it. And I'm like, did it lay down just now? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, this one, I'm confused. Like, so we're trying to be really certain, because we've heard a lot of other people that tell us, like, you need to understand the difference between centimeters and inches, because they'll tell you 140 centimeters, and that might mean 46 inches. I'm like, okay, that's good to know. So I've done some conversions in my head already. I'm ready for that. And we finally settle on what the right ibex to shoot is, and Barrett's the same. And they're adamant on this 1, 2, 3 shoot situation. The downside to this is that the one that Barrett likes is literally butt facing directly toward him. And he's like, I'm not doing 1, 2, 3 shoot. I'm like, I know, this is dumb. He's like, you shoot first, because if Barrett had shot first and I didn't shoot, I didn't want him to feel pressure then to go on his Marco Polo hunt and me not film it, or without me filming it. So we had decided I would shoot first, and then I'd focus on filming the rest of the hunt. So I shoot, or I get ready. Barrett says, you just shoot when you're ready. And I say, ready when you are. And he's like, go. And the second he said go, I touched it off, and I was able to see my Ibex didn't take a step, just instant off switch. It was a good shot. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but there was
nothing.
Everything did its job. It just instant off, and it rolled like twice on this little cliff it was on, and then just stopped. Every other Ibex just took off scattering. Some went down, some went up, some went left, some went right, except for the one that Barrett was on. It stood up. It's like it just kind of looked around, and we didn't think that that's the way it would happen, but it just stood there, turned broadside to Barrett, and he sent one he was shooting a 300 Weatherby, and instant drop. Well, that's not true. He ended up putting a second. He didn't need it. It was standing dead. But he put a second one in it just because they're in crazy country and we didn't want it to die somewhere weird.
Yeah, you didn't want it to take that death roll that's going to be like cliffs away.
Yeah, so he gave it a second shot that hindsight proved wasn't needed, but that one dropped it right away. So then we just take the trek over there. We're pumped, and we take a moment over there. Barrett and I are both Christians. We kind of pray over there, and then Saku comes over, and he's like, man, thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming out here. Because people like you do things like this, my kids can smile, and my kids have food. And like we had this moment. Saku tells us that he's a Protestant Christian, which is really weird for over there because it's like a Muslim country.
Yeah. Wow.
And we just really had an awesome moment on the side of the mountain. And we do all our pictures and all that stuff and get the capes off. We took every ounce of that meat that you could take. Like the local guys, I couldn't believe how much meat they took off of there because it's Ibex. It's not like known for being awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we then we start heading back.
So you're loading up in packs at this point?
So I got to back up because I was getting ahead of myself. So that's why you're here. Thank you for keeping me on track here. So as we hiked over the 500 or so yards to where our animals were, which was like a lot more than 500 yards because it wasn't we couldn't walk the straight line.
Yeah.
One of the guides went with us. Saku went with us, and then one went back to get the horses. So he went all the way back and then went way down and around with the horses and came up a whole nother coulee, basically, to come to where he could get to where the Ibex were.
Oh, so he was able to get horses all the way to you. Okay.
Yeah, and he basically got there the same time we did. I don't know how that was physically possible.
He's probably like You didn't see him, but he was probably sprinting down the hill.
It's unbelievable. So he just like hooked all the horses up in a gang and then just pulled them.
Yeah.
So we took our pictures where the Ibex died, and then we essentially rolled them down quite a ways to where it was flat enough that we could kind of field process them and get the horses too. And that was several hundred yards below.
So interesting here. You said they took everything. Did they take any organs, or is there anything there that they liked?
I didn't see them take organs, but
Okay,
I mean,
I was just
they
curious.
literally like intricately cut out around every rib. They took the whole racks of ribs, all the meat was taken. They took some neck meat.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
And then give us like a perspective of how big these, because I've never seen an Ibex. Like, how is this like, can you compare it? Is it like a whitetail, or how big is this?
I would say that I shot an 11-and-a-half-year-old Ibex. You can count the growth rings like you can on a sheep, like same on a goat. It's 11-and-a-half years old, 46 inches long, and the body on mine was enormous. It was like
Big,
like a big mule deer buck. Like
Really? See, I'm like picturing a goat.
But I would say body like girth wise, that's what it was.
Like
but short legs, like not the height necessarily of a mule deer, and probably a little less short, but width wise and just like overall like cross section, it was
Pretty meaty.
pretty meaty. Yeah. Barrett's was a little younger, a couple years younger, and 43 inches, so not substantially smaller. But he joked. He goes, "Dude, your Ibex looks like it could have eaten my Ibex." It was so big. We ended up eating them, eating some. Not that good.
Not that good.
Not that good.
How did they cook
No.
it? Just over the fire, or
No,
did they try to do
it was like
a
a kind of a
dish?
stew,
Stew.
because I think even stewed, like wet cooking method, long
Yeah.
and slow, crazy tough.
Really?
The
Okay.
flavor
Yeah.
wasn't bad.
What did they throw in there? Like,
Potatoes, carrots, onions, like
I was gonna guess-
typical
yeah,
like
gotcha.
stew. Like if we're gonna you
Yeah.
know make a stew, it was like that, but Ibex,
nice. Okay.
and it wasn't great. So we then start riding back after we do all the stuff. We start riding back. Barrett and I are like, we're talking. We're like, dude, this is awesome. Now we're gonna go look for Marco Polo, which we have to go a lot higher because the Marco Polo are gonna hang out on glaciers to get away from bugs. So we're thrilled that this is gonna go down, and we get back to camp. The U.S. outfitter's there. He's talking about how great our Ibex are, and then he's like, "Yeah, you guys need a rest day tomorrow." And we're like, "Oh my gosh, you know what we don't need is a rest day. Like we're on cloud 9. We're both in pretty good shape. Like let's roll." And he's like, "No, really, really, really need a rest day." So we're not that pumped about the rest day, and so we've kind of become. We had a moment with Saku on the mountain, so we're like, "Let's just go talk to Saku in the morning. We'll pack our stuff.
We've got this.
We
got vibes
this.
with him.
We're bonded. It's all good." So we talked to Saku, and he's like, "You need to go talk to the U.S. outfitter, and we'll figure that out." So he's still adamant that we need to take a rest day. We talked to Saku again, and Saku's like, "Here's the deal. A U.S. outfitter has not paid for the Marco Polo hunt." And Barrett's like, "Well, that's not possible because I paid for the Marco Polo hunt."
And then he's like, "You're not. That may be true, but I have not been paid."
Correct. And he's like,
Yeah.
"And we cannot legally go do this because you don't have a Marco Polo tag at this point." And we didn't exactly. They didn't issue us an Ibex tag. Like it's different over
Yeah, it's
there.
like
It's
I'm
not
sure
like
it's like a quota. They have some kind of, the outfitter has so many allotment, I'm sure.
the native language in Kyrgyzstan is Russian. So like even the alphabet is weird. So you can't even just like look at it and read it. But we had paperwork in Russian with their names on it and stuff, and like it was legit for Ibex, but there was no Marco Polo license, and nobody told us that until this moment. And immediately I'm like, "Oh, that's why we've been going so slow. That's why we've been delaying every step of the way, because the U.S. outfitter is trying to get the money for this hunt." He came. I believe that he wanted, he didn't think that he was going to stiff Barrett from the beginning. He was there. Otherwise, he would have just not shown up. So we get a bunch of far-fetched stories about why the money's not there. And long story short, the money's just not there. And we realize it. The other guys start coming back to camp.
And they were successful?
Robert shot an Ibex the first day out as well, but he was far enough away they spent the night out there because they were going to start riding back in the dark. And I didn't like talk that much about the terrain that we rode the horses through. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Man from Snowy River, like that epic scene where he's like chasing the Brumbies down the crazy steep mountain. Like that was kids' play, man. Like we were riding up and down things that I didn't think were possible. Like side hilling, scree fields on horses.
Did the horses know the deal too, though? Or were they just like, yep,
they were fine. They were fine. There were 2 times that I was like, I am not good with this. And like, I'm kind of a adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, okay.
I ride motorcycles a lot, like, and not just like street bikes. Like I ride dirt bikes, like hard enduro, like real stuff. And I'm like, I don't think that this is safe. And I got a little bit of footage of Barrett and his horse like really stumbling going up this hill. And I say to the guy, I'm like, kind of like, no, I'm not doing this. Like, do the international like hand across the neck. And they kind of look up and like, yeah, everybody walk.
Yeah, he like
yeah, it just got really steep. So
yeah.
we walked up this portion, but so Robert had the same experience. Like, this is unbelievable, the stuff we're riding horses across, and I'm not doing that in the dark. So he basically forced them into staying the night out there. Came back the next morning. Gabe was actually archery hunting.
Oh wow!
For Ibex, and he actually had some close encounters. He ended up switching to a rifle on day 2. At the day that we kind of figure out that this Marco Polo thing is not going to plan. He comes back that afternoon, successful on shooting with his rifle. But these guys are coming back into camp, and they're like, why are you here? Why aren't you shooting Marco Polo? And then
it's like that awkward,
well, we're going to tell them what's going on here with the outfitter who's here with us, literally in camp with us.
Kind of acting like nothing's wrong.
I mean, he's acting a little bit like something's wrong at this point. He's become very sparse. But what we realized is, and I may have people reach out to me after this podcast that you may have done some homework and know who the outfitter is, and I think that's okay. I encourage you to reach out to us on our mark at weatherby.com. We've got an email set up for this podcast, and I'll try to reach back out to you with info. But let's just say that the money's gone. The money's gone. I think COVID was really bad for this outfitter. I think he made some poor life decisions. I think he potentially spent this money in other places, thinking that he could get it back. And it didn't come through. So we realized that he's basically dialing for dollars. Every time we stopped, he's calling somebody, trying to get another deposit or get some more hunt money. And that was really hard, really hard to realize while we were in this beautiful place. We saw a herd of ewes and lamb, Marco Polo, on our way to hunt Ibex. The bachelor, they hang up high, but the moms and kids will stay down low. And it was like, we were so pumped to go hunt Marco Polo and to be like
that
close. And I felt so bad for Barrett. I mean, there's a lot of money on the line for this hunt, a lot. And he was friends with this guy. And I don't think this guy ever started off to go down this path of basically, it's a felony, of being a criminal and making these poor life decisions. But for whatever reason, that's where he ended up. And Barrett's like, hey man, we can't stay here. Like, what are we going to do? Stay here with like no service? Yeah. I got to figure out what's going on here. There was some Wi-Fi at the lodge. Like, you could kind of text from it. You couldn't even really get a Wi-Fi call out.
Which seems kind of crazy that there's Wi-Fi in this crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was
place.
super nice lodge, but I don't know. if it was Starlink. I don't know what it was, but it only kind of worked. So I don't think it was Starlink. I heard the Starlink's pretty fast. But Barrett's like, guys, we got to go. I'll pay for hotels in Bishkek until we can get flights changed. But if I stay under the same roof as this guy that just stole this much money from me, like I might do something bad. And so we all feel for him, and none of us want to be there anymore because we just went from this like crazy high, and then we came down pretty low. So we get in Land Cruisers. We talk to Saku, and we're like, Saku, can we just like make this a one-day drive this time instead of like camping on the side of the road somewhere? So we make it back in one day, 16 hours or so, and we get back to a hotel, start like trying to change flights, which proved impossible. Couldn't change flights. So we stay in a hotel in Bishkek for about a week while we wait for our original flight date to come up. And all the while we're getting back with people stateside, working with police, trying to figure out what Barrett's options are. Does he ever see his money again? What does this look like? And it's tough. We're calling people that we know have hunts booked with this outfitter, trying to like warn them. Robert had hunted with this outfitter before, had a great experience, was his second time, had recommended him to other people, started calling them immediately.
So, yeah, he's like telling all his buddies and his friends and acquaintances.
Guys, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. And, yeah, it just was – it turned into a massive nightmare really, really fast. Really, really fast. So I learned an interesting thing about, I guess, an international hunt. So typically, like if you book with an outfitter in the U.S., like here in Wyoming, if you book, we've had some on this podcast, if you book with them, they're typically there. If not, you're with one of their guides, but they're an employee of that person. And so like it's all pretty transparent. It's pretty simple. Internationally, it's not the same. It's not like the outfitter that we are going through is the one that is hiring the guides and doing the guiding. He's basically like a broker. So he is working with an outfitter in Kyrgyzstan to then basically pay for our hunt, and then he's kind of he's the middleman. He's managing all of the
correct. More of the travel, more of the documentation, more of getting you to like almost like a travel agent in the sense that they're getting you there.
So if you're going to go on a international hunt like this and you book through a U.S., let's just say broker, I don't really care what they say, the U.S. broker, because a lot of times they'll want to protect the international guy to prevent you from booking direct with them. But at this point, you've already booked a hunt with them. You're on the hook. You've probably given them a deposit. You need to get in touch with whoever the actual provider of the hunt is on the international side. Contact them and just verify that everything is good. I would do that. Like, but once your hunt has been paid for, like most of these guys had fully paid for the hunts for like months, like well before we booked the flights. Before booking a flight, you should at least verify, hey, we're coming. All this is kosher. Like, this is good. And if it's all been paid for, before you get on your plane to leave, you need to get back in touch with them and say, is everything good? Had we done that, Saku would have told us not to come at all. Because when we left, our Ibex had not yet even been paid for. We found out from Saku.
It just happened over the time of you getting there.
Correct.
And all that time in between.
Correct.
Of getting to the mountain.
He cut it way, 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 way down to the wire. And Saku wanted to get in touch with us, but didn't know how to, because the U.S. outfitter was also blocking us from the Kyrgyzstan outfitter. So it was just kind of a wreck. So we went from the super high to like really low. like killing a absolute bucket list species to having tens of thousands of dollars stolen from you in like 12 hours. Yeah. And it just happened like that.
And then you have to sit. You can't just go home, see your family. You can't do any of that. You're there for a whole nother week.
Yeah.
And then, a country you're not familiar with.
Correct. It was pretty crazy. So, yeah, that's my story.
That's your story.
That's my story. I'm sticking to it. It's pretty wild.
That is a wild story.
Yeah. So nonetheless, I still had a great time. Barrett says he still had a great time because he's an awesome dude and has a great attitude. But yeah, I feel so bad for him, and I'm trying to do everything I can to help him, even through this podcast, that if somebody can learn a little about how to maybe do international hunting just a little different or a little better.
Make sure you're asking questions.
Man, yeah, you got to know what's going on. And I think if you're paying that much money for a hunt, it's okay to ask, hey, have you paid the local people before my arrival? And can you prove it? And can you put me in touch with them so I can verify? Because I know this guy that works at Weatherby.
And this is what happened to him.
This is what happened to him. And it's bad. So I am super, super grateful, even though I had kind of a weird experience. I got my Ibex of a lifetime, and the only reason I was able to do a trip like this was because of Wild Sheep Foundation and the Less Than One Eye Club. And I've already talked to Gray and kind of told him, the whole story. They're aware. Wild Sheep sent out an email recently.
Yep. I did see an email
about this outfitter. So that'll really put the pieces of the puzzle together. So if you made it almost an hour into this deal, you probably know who we're talking about now. But yeah, it's a pretty crazy deal.
Yeah, and then maybe just to kind of wrap this up, get involved with Wild Sheep Foundation. They do a great job. I know that I'm a member. I've never drawn anything. I'm hoping to get out of that club and get as lucky as you one day. But no, they do some incredible work.
Your odds are good at the Less Than One.
Your odds are good. I'm excited to get to go to my first sheep show this year.
Yeah, so do get involved. Look up Wild Sheep and join. Become a member. Their mission is to put and keep wild sheep on the mountain, and they are a species that definitely need help with all the domestic sheep that graze. Sadly, especially bighorns, they're just not super resilient.
Yeah, they don't do that scabies and stuff like that.
Yeah, they get
that domestic illness that a lot of that is.
Most all domestic sheep have it, and it doesn't seem to affect them.
Yeah.
It's weird, and then it really affects bighorn sheep poorly. So a lot of the money that they use is habitat protection, making sure that and it's balance, right, of ranching, farming, and wild animals, and they kind of help the overlap of all of that, and they do a good job of it. So do get involved, and if you can make it to Sheep Week or Sheep Show, it's a great place to win a sheep hunt, I can tell you. And I've talked to Gray, like I said, about this, and I don't blame Wild Sheep Foundation at all for what happened poorly on the hunt. It's one guy that made some really poor decisions outside of anything else. He just did a bad thing, and it's unfortunate. I hope that he's able to recover. I think he's got a lot of ground to gain. I hope that he can get some people's money back. I'm not sure that'll happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tyler, thanks for listening to my story.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I'm excited maybe one day to be on the Sheep Mountain. So
cool.